Welcome back to another tutorial that I'm going to be doing. This one's going to be actually in teaching you how to start your city, what to do when you're starting your city, and of course also building specializations. Now, the first city you should start off with, or it would be preferable, it's the easiest city, it's agricultural city, and of course offices. Why, you ask? Because agricultural don't cost you anything, they actually give you profit, that being taxes, and offices of course also give you taxes, so you're not really using or wasting or paying off money in terms of building these two things, products or services to sell. Unlike when you build utilities, utilities cost you a certain amount of cash. Now, the first thing when you're going to start off with, of course, a farm and office city is you're going to be building a lot of farms. You're mainly going to rely on your farm income initially. You're going to build a lot of farms. You're literally going to cover at least this massive amount of area. Make sure that the farms are beside each other. Make sure that the actual buildings are beside each other, so then you can build connectors and, of course, get those bus stations and bus pickup points, because this is the most effective way to pick up all the people and drop them off for the unskilled, and of course that'll tremendously cut down your actual traffic. Now anyways, that's another tip and trick in terms of the farm city. What you're going to initially do, of course, is build a lot of unskilled workers, and once you get all those unskilled workers, then you're going to need a couple of skilled workers, of course, to get those farms up and going. Once you're going to get the farms up and going, you're going to realize that you do need silos. Of course, silos need skill, that's why you're going to start building them. And once you get even more of those up and going, you're going to need fertilizers. Let's take a look at if I can catch them. And fertilizers, of course, will need executives. Of course, simultaneously, while you're building this, you will increase production of your offices. You'll start off with a small office block, maybe about the size of this. And you will continue to increase your offices simultaneously, while you will export immediately all your extra tokens for offices and your agriculture. Now, this is really easy because you really have no fixed costs here, no utilities, nothing really. All the utilities are being covered by the taxes, nearly by the residents. Okay, so utilities and city services are pretty much covered. So there's nothing really much to worry about. This is a very, very easy city to build. So that's all you technically do in terms of building this clean agricultural and offices city. You're just going to increase production, and once you increase the production to a certain point, then for the actual agriculture is not really a big deal. Let me explain. Because the agriculture, when you go to it, it shows you, it says only requires unskilled workers. But when you go to the offices, when you start building the offices, you're going to go to the offices and you're going to go to the low. And when you move on top of the low, you'll notice that even the low offices, low density, requires, hold on, where is it? Low density requires, there's an issue here. Here it says executives and elites, but that's got to be a mistake. That's probably another bug. Let's see if we can fix that. I'm sure the low offices don't require executives and elites. It just does that because I built so much on this map. So let's switch. Now, let's take a look at the offices in my other map where I don't have that many offices, and this should be more reasonable. Low density, and here you see the low density only needs skilled workers. So initially you will only start building skilled workers. Remember, it doesn't mean you have to quickly jump to build executives, okay? Because medium requires skilled and executives. Remember, you don't have enough money to support that yet. So what you can do in the beginning is you build a lot of these low offices require, let's see, you take up a huge amount of space for the low skilled offices. You build so much that your profit finally gets to at least above 25,000 till you can actually build up your elites, because elites obviously are going to cost you a little bit in terms of cities and services, la-di-da-da-da. And once you get your elites online, you're going to start removing all your actually low density and replacing them with medium density, that being skilled and executives. It also depends on how you built it and how exactly your economy is. For example, if you're selling a lot of agriculture, there's no need to start building off with the actual low density. You can quickly directly start off with the medium because you have enough money. You have, let's say, 25,000, so you can obviously directly build up your executives, and you can directly start building your medium density offices. Okay, now same thing with medium density offices. You build a lot of them until you start exporting. You start getting maybe a few specialized buildings, and once you get those specialized buildings that increase offices, then you will get, of course, more income, and then you can start maybe looking at the high. The high obviously requires elites, and elites, you can take a look at my elites tutorial in terms of how to deal with elites. But once you start getting, let's say, 25 to 40,000, you can obviously start building your elites, and then you can replace all your medium offices with the high density offices. So that's pretty much it for the agricultural town. Now, the next town is Holidays. Holidays is actually a very, very easy town to build. You just start off, of course, what you're going to do is you're going to take a look at what you need to build. That being holiday hotels, not business hotels, remember, holiday hotels. And remember, the first thing you're going to look at, the first you can say tier. There's different types of tiers. This one, as you see, requires unskilled and skilled. So we're going to keep going until it switches. So unskilled, skilled, unskilled, skilled. That's what I did. Unskilled, skilled. You see the large hotel, it switches. Now we need executives. So the last one is the 2-star hotel. So what you're going to do initially is only build unskilled and skilled, and you're going to build a lot of these 2-star hotels. You're going to build so many of them all around the map. You're going to build them all 2-star hotels until you get, again, around 20,000 profit, and then you're going to start building your executives up. Once you start building your executives up, you're going to look at the next highest tier, which is unskilled, skilled, and executives. So you're going to keep going unskilled, skilled, executives, and that being the last one. So the large prestige hotel is the last sort of hotel that you can build in terms of holidays. So that's it. For hotels, literally, you don't really need elites for hotels as well. You can do it with executives only. So then you build up your elites, and then you switch all your lower tier, you can say, holiday hotels with the highest tier holiday hotel, which of course requires executives. And that's pretty much it. Now for the third city, that being the heavy industry, oil and electricity city, you're going to start off in the same principle. Of course, you see the final stage that actually moved my heavy industry section to a completely different city, which is heavy industry specialized. But on the top right side, you're going to see as I slowly started building up my heavy industry, slowly, bit by bit, I did start increasing my heavy industry. I did start off with just one oil. As you do see, I do have just one oil at the build-up rate, and it expands obviously substantially. It expands to a point where you're again gonna have to see what is the requirement in terms of classes. So I'm gonna go to, let's say, my industry. I'm gonna go to heavy industry and low density. Low density, you see, only requires unskilled. So medium density requires unskilled and skilled. So and high density requires executive. So right off the bat initially, and when you start off, you can obviously start off with medium density. It's very easy to support unskilled and skilled. So you're going to start off with medium density. You're going to obviously build a huge amount, as you do see on the top right. It's going to keep looping, so you're going to see how it build it up. Before I actually deleted the whole heavy industry, I actually did expand to quite a large amount of medium density, so I do get that profit up and going. And then once I did get the amount of money that I did need, I removed them and I replaced them with high density the moment I could afford or have enough cash that I can actually build up my executives. And the same thing applies for the oil, because again, you do have the oil and the specializations required for the oil. So that's the same principle for the oil. You start off with one, and the oil only requires unskilled and skilled. So in the beginning, you can obviously build your medium heavy industry and the oil, because they both require the same amount of worker classes. So that's pretty easy. Only the specialized buildings do require, you can say, executives, and of course later on the elites. So literally my elites here, as you see, I do have very little elites, and these are literally only for my specialization buildings. There's no other employment for my elites here, only for the specialization buildings. Now again, when I am specializing this town, I don't build all the specializations, because as you can see, there is a point that I don't need them. I'm not counting my heavy industry, but for example, I do believe that I do have some oil, manufacturing, heavy industry, no fuel production. As you see here, I have 20% fuel production. You're gonna notice that in terms of specializing your cities, there's gonna be a point when you're gonna realize there's no point in building up all these specialization buildings. Remember, the specialized buildings, not only do you have a specialization section for each category. For example, for manufacturing, I can build specialization buildings. I'm not there yet because I don't see them, but for manufacturing, you have. For heavy industry, you have specialization buildings. For agriculture, you also have specialization buildings, and for offices. Now, for specialization buildings, usually each category has its own specialization buildings, but offices also have specializations for different fields, not its own. So for example, an office specialization building can improve obviously offices, can improve manufacturing, can also improve oil and electricity, I do believe fuel and electricity as well. So offices do have buildings that help you increase the tokens for other services and utilities. So keep that in mind in terms of specialization. So don't only focus on checking out the exceptional, I call them specialization buildings, for each category. Go to the offices, because of course offices also specialize, have actual office buildings that improve your actual resource. So that's really, really good to keep in mind. Now, same thing applies here. You're gonna keep building up. It doesn't mean don't try to rush it. Okay, so don't rush it. If you don't have the amount of income that you need and you're still stuck on medium density or low density, depending on what you're building up, keep building a lot of it. It doesn't mean that you're going the wrong way about it. Just build a shitload of it, build a lot, maybe fill up this whole section until you get the money that you need, that you can finally support either the executives or the elites, and then you can slowly destroy it and rebuild it with the high density. So this is practically it for this town. Of course, later on, you will notice that I did remove all the heavy industry because I didn't have enough tokens when you go to the trade. I had so many tokens exporting and importing from this town that I really had no space, especially heavy industry does take up my freight capacity. So as you see, just with oil and electricity, look how much freight it's using. It's using 290 freight. So obviously my tokens, my heavy industry couldn't be here because heavy industry, I required a lot of heavy industry export. So I just made a special town for that. But that's the end game, so-called. Now, for manufacturing, it's the same principle. You're obviously going to check out what exactly you're going to need for the manufacturing specialized city. That being a low density, you're going to see requires unskilled and skilled. Let's go for medium, requires executives. Okay, so obviously from the beginning you can't afford executives, so you're really left with no choice but to start with low density buildings. So again, you're going to build a shitload of low density buildings, a lot of them, okay, to get that income. And the same principle applies with your actual waste. Now, waste, you got to understand that finally these utilities, same thing as fuel, they do cost. So you're gonna really need to rely on the money and the tax from the manufacturing or from the heavy industry to pay off the fixed cost of the utilities. Remember, the utilities in the beginning do cost you, but once you start getting the specialization buildings up, you're gonna make so many tokens. For example, my 20 tokens of my waste turn into, I don't know, 500 tokens, which means I can make a hell of a lot more money. So remember, in the beginning, utility is more of an investment. Yes, you do make money, not that much, but once you continue pushing on this, you do get more. Same thing for waste, you only need unskilled and skilled, so you're going to start off, of course, with waste the way it is, and for the manufacturing, you're going to start off with low density. Once you start making a little bit more money, you're going to obviously start off your executives and then switch all your low density. You're going to remove all your low density buildings and start building it up with medium density. Again, don't rush it, don't jump it. I'm going to keep repeating this because people always try to rush it, and then your economy is going to collapse in on itself. You're going to notice you're losing a lot of money and it's all going to go to shit. So be patient. You just got to build up a lot of everything and then destroy it slowly and replace it by higher density buildings. The same thing applies for utilities, not obviously in that sense. The only reason why you need higher classes for utilities is for the specialization buildings. That's about it, because obviously the specialization buildings require elites and some of them even require executives as well. So this is practically it for this actual town specialization. Of course, on the top right you can see how I did start off building it. I did build off obviously a little bit more of manufacturing blocks, and I did slowly start to expand my actual waste as I was making profit off it. And then finally I did blot down a little bit of elites, and of course you do see that I did stick that airport just for the sake of satisfying the actual freight demand, even though I don't have a harbor. But you will realize you're gonna need to stick some sort of external or intercontinental city freight link one way or another. Now, for your high-tech and water, same principle applies. You're gonna obviously take a look at what's the lowest requirement for high-tech, which is the low needs skilled and executives, the medium needs skilled executives and elites, and the high density needs 3. This is a little bit complicated, so what you're going to start off, of course, if you're going to notice on the top right, I did start off obviously exporting water first, because even though it does cost me money, I did start exporting it and make money off the water that will sort of cover my actual initial fixed costs for my executives. You can obviously also import some money to make it just that little bit easier in the beginning to actually cover your cost of your executives. As you do see on the top right, I do have small little pockets of each, and I did start to expand, of course, my high-tech all the way, and then it did increase to such a point that I did have, as you do notice, that the actual low density needs skilled and executives, and the high density already needs elites. Now The trick is if you do notice on the top right side, I did cover the whole thing with low density. As you noticed, look at how much low density I did stick in the actual initial build, because remember, it's going to cost me so much to start up my elites that I did realize, you know, might as well just produce more of the actual high-tech by just building more of the lower density. Again, you have to look at this mentality, and of course I did produce a lot of my water, and I did rely sort of on my water export in the beginning as well. And the rest is history, as you do so see as it slowly expanded. I did remove, the moment I did build up my elites, as you did notice, once my elites plopped down, I started removing my medium, you can say low density, low density, and I directly jumped into high density, and I did move my high density, of course, to the bottom right, so it's a little bit closer to my actual elites, and the metro line as well from my elites. So this is practically it, which brings us, of course, now to the final actual city, so-called, was the heavy industry. As you do notice on the top right side, I did start building off of here because I didn't have the money to level out the mountainous areas here, so I did slowly build off the heavy industry. Again, you do look at the heavy industry as mentioned before, medium required only skilled, so I did start off directly with the actual medium, and then as I did build more and more of the medium, I made more money as I exported it. And then I directly, obviously, it jumped then to the high density. But since this was the last stage, I did have all the resources I required, so I just imported all the resources needed. As always, heavy industry is one of the hardest cities to build, as the demand for heavy industry is very high, as it does need a lot of resources and services to get it going. Again, I did build it on the actual water edge as to increase the freight capacity, but that's pretty much it. Of course, on the top right, you do see on how that worked. Now, for the specializations for each, again, remember, each industry has its own specialization buildings. As you do see, I do have, if I do click my specializations here, I do have the ones that I built. Now, I did build all the actual specializations for the heavy industry. It doesn't mean that the offices doesn't have. Offices also has, I do believe, specializations for the heavy industry. So let's take a look. Here's manufacturing, here's food production, and I do believe, hold on, waste, water production. Nope, it doesn't have, or I already did build it, I'm not sure. Hold on. City researches, offices, here you go. Here are the two offices that I built from the office specializations. As you see the two office buildings here actually do